We talk about the economy all the time, right? It feels like this giant, abstract thing. But what if we looked at it differently? What if we treated it like a living system? Something that has a health profile we can actually check, kind of like its own annual checkup.
So that's really the big question, isn't it? We hear about it on the news every single day. But how do you actually check its pulse? How do you give this massive, complicated machine a proper health assessment? Well, today we're going to put on our lab coats and do just that.
Okay, so just like when a doctor checks your heart rate, your temperature, and your blood pressure, economists have three main indicators they are constantly watching. These are the vital signs that tell them pretty much everything they need to know about the economy's overall health. Let's break them down.
First up, the big one, GDP. You could basically think of this as the economy's heartbeat. It's the indicator everyone watches because it gives us a big picture snapshot of everything a country makes and sells in a year. A strong, steady GDP, that's like a strong, steady pulse. It tells you the system is running well.
And what's really cool is when you look under the hood at the formula, it's kind of the blueprint for the whole economy. You've got C for consumption, that's all of us, buying stuff. It's the biggest piece of the puzzle. Then I for business investment, G for government spending, and finally the balance between exports and imports. Getting this balance is key to seeing what's really driving the engine.
All right, next up we take the economy's temperature. And that, my friends, is inflation. It's just a measure of how fast prices are going up. Now, a little bit of warmth is actually a good sign. It's normal. But if that temperature spikes, like a high fever, it starts to burn through the value of our money. Suddenly, your dollar just doesn't stretch as far.
And this is exactly why inflation is such a big deal for our savings. The nominal return is that nice number you see on your investment statement, but the real return, that's what you're actually left with after inflation takes its bite. If inflation is running hotter than your returns, you're actually losing buying power. That's why you've always got to think in real terms.
And our final vital sign is unemployment, which I like to think of as the economy's blood pressure. It tells us how efficiently jobs and opportunities are circulating. High unemployment can mean there are blockages in the system. But low unemployment? That suggests a healthy, strong flow, with everything moving as it should.
So we've checked the vitals. But here's the thing. Just like our own health, an economy's health isn't flat. It doesn't stay the same. It naturally goes through ups and downs. And this brings us to what economists call the economic cycle.
Take a look at this chart. This is basically the EKG of the economy. You can see it moves in these waves. It starts with a recovery, things get better, then it accelerates into a boom, that's the peak. But of course, what goes up must come down. That's when we see a deceleration, which can slide into a recession at the bottom or the trough before the whole thing starts all over again. But, life happens. And sometimes, this natural rhythm gets a massive shock. Just like unexpected events can affect our personal health, things like major global conflicts, huge technological breakthroughs, or, a global health crisis can totally jolt the system off its regular path.
So what happens when the economy gets sick or starts running a fever? Well, that's when the doctors step in. And the first one we're going to talk about is the government, whose main toolkit is something called fiscal policy.
Think of fiscal policy as the government's prescription pad. It's all about pulling different levers. By changing how much it spends, how much it borrows, and how it taxes people and businesses, the government can try to nudge the economy back to health.
And there are basically two main prescriptions. If the economy is slow and sluggish, the government can use a stimulant, lower taxes and more spending to get everyone to buy more stuff. But if the economy is overheating and inflation is getting out of control, it'll prescribe a sedative, higher taxes and less spending to cool things down.
Now, the government isn't the only doctor in the house. There's also a specialist, the central bank. And it's an independent institution that has its own powerful and often much faster acting set of tools.
The central bank's medicine is called monetary policy. And really, it's all about controlling the money supply, which is kind of the lifeblood of the economy. By managing how much money is out there, and crucially, how much it costs to borrow it, the central bank has a huge influence on just about everything. And just like the government, it has two main approaches. To jumpstart a weak economy, the central bank can give it an adrenaline shot by lowering interest rates. That makes it cheaper to borrow money for a house, a car, or for a business to expand. To fight off high inflation, it prescribes a cool down, raising interest rates to make borrowing more expensive, which slows down spending.
And this is a really key difference.
Central banks are basically the economy's first responders. While a government's fiscal policy can get tied up in politics for months, a central bank can change interest rates in a single afternoon meeting. That speed is what makes it the first line of defense.
But what happens when the normal medicine isn't working? What if interest rates are already at zero and the economy still needs help? Well, that's when the doctors have to try something more drastic. Think of quantitative easing, or QE, as emergency surgery for the financial system.
With QE, the central bank gives the economy a direct infusion. It literally creates new money and uses it to buy things like government bonds. This pumps cash directly into the system to get things moving. The opposite of that is quantitative tightening, or QT. That's when the central bank starts to drain that excess money back out to make sure the patient doesn't overdose on stimulus and cause runaway inflation.
So, let's pull it all together. That was the economy's annual checkup. We've looked at its vital signs: GDP, inflation, unemployment. We've traced its natural heartbeat on the EKG of the business cycle. And we've looked at the different medicines prescribed by our two main doctors, the government and the central bank.
But after all of that, it leaves us with one final, big question. The economy isn't a simple machine with predictable levers. It's made up of billions of us making our own unpredictable choices every day. So, with all these tools and all these theories, are the doctors ever truly in control? Now that is something to think about.